Hello, welcome to session one. Darcy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Felipa. So I'm going to be talking about, a retrospective, right, of what we saw in the environment, um, deepfakes, LLM attacks, defending that in AI-enabled threat landscape. Some of the things that we will discuss is why AI security matters now, deepfakes and AI impersonation, AI-assisted phishing and fraud, LLM and AI agent attacks, classical attacks amplified by AI scams and privacy leaks, defensive lessons for AI systems, final takeaway and key lessons. So why AI security matters now? AI technologies are being integrated into business and consumer applications at unprecedented speeds, often faster than security measures can keep up with. Cyber criminals exploit generative AI to automate attacks, increase scale, and create highly realistic social engineering campaigns that evade traditional defenses. 62% of organizations experienced AI-driven cyber attacks in the past year, with nearly half viewing generative AI threats as a top concern for their security teams. Defenders must evolve beyond traditional cybersecurity to implement AI-specific protections that address new attack surfaces and tactics enabled by AI. One of the things that we saw this year was deepfakes, right? So these were, predominant in 2025. Deepfakes are synthetic media created using AI models like generative adversarial networks, diffusion models, and voice cloning technologies to fabricate realistic but fake content. Generative adversarial networks, or GANs, work by having two neural networks compete to create hyper-realistic images or videos, which form the backbone technology for many deepfake creations. Diffusion models enhance image and video generation by iteratively refining content, while voice cloning models replicate human voices with high fidelity for audio deepfakes. And these are continuing to get better each and every time, each and every iteration. Deepfake attacks target multiple services, including voice impersonation, video manipulation, forced images, and synthetic identities used for fraud or social engineering. We all saw some real world deepfake attacks, CEO impersonation scams. I think everyone's probably seen some, you know, this particular sort of attack happened. It was in the news. It was, it's being talked about still in 2026. Basically, what happened is attackers used deepfake audio and video to impersonate a CEO, tricking that particular organization to wire money, believing that we're wiring money because of the CEO mandate, right? And that actually was not the case. So really big deal, really, you know, idea of what not to do, but deepfakes led to that situation, right? So fraudsters initiate fake video calls mimicking trusted individuals to request urgent wire transfers, exploiting trust and urgency to bypass controls. Deepfakes enable creation of synthetic identities, combining real and fake attributes used for fraud in banking, insurance, and identity verification systems, which I believe, one of our speakers and panelists is going to be talking about that a little bit later on in more depth. So why do deepfakes work, right? So authority bias and urgency. Attackers leverage trust in authoritative figures and create a sense of urgency, compelling victims to act quickly without verification, increasing success rate. So this is just more glorified social engineering. That's really what it comes down to, right? Making them act on urgency, make them act on something that they need to maybe not necessarily want to do, but get coerced into doing. Generative AI produces highly convincing audio and video that mimics real people's voices and appearances, making deepfakes difficult to detect with the naked eye. Advanced voice cloning models replicate tone, pitch, and speech patterns, enabling attackers to impersonate voices authentically in scams and social engineering. Obviously, we're getting closer to midterm election season. You start seeing a lot of that in the political space, political arena, where everything happening with the war in Iran and different things happening in the geopolitical space. There's a lot of that fake stuff happening out there, and it's really kind of hard to discern and delineate what's real and what's not. AI assisted phishing and fraud. So traditional phishing is getting a little bit of an AI push, right? So relying on that broad generic messaging, looking at grammatical errors, focusing on that, mass distribution. Targets are less personalized, making detection easier. So phishing emails, generic messaging, high error rates. So that's actually, part of that, right? So AI enables that, and they start getting a little bit more context aware, more realistic, more targeted, um, into using AI to, assist with phishing campaigns, and attacks on just people within enterprises and just normal folks, on a day to day as well. From an AI fraud ecosystem, threat actors leverage AI for automated spear phishing, malware development, social engineering scripts. Large AI providers detect LLM use for phishing and influence campaigns. So look at malware generation, social engineering automation, building that into the playbooks. More and more things are happening where AI is being powered and empowering these fraudsters and attackers to discern and attack different areas within enterprises from an AI-enabled attack pipeline, right? So it's not that any different from the cyber kill chain that we know now, right? It starts with reconnaissance. They're gathering that information. They're using OSINT. They're looking at the vulnerabilities. They're personalizing the attack profile. They're looking at their LinkedIn profiles, right? Then they start generating that large language model, personalized context-aware phishing emails designed to bypass traditional filters that are out there to deceive. And then they start engaging in that, having that deep fake technology to create that synthetic voice, that video call to impersonate that trusted individual. And then it starts going from there, right? Then once they have access or they were able to breach that particular situation, they can harvest credentials, right? Victims are tricked to revealing the credentials, sensitive data through phishing links, social engineering, having that attacker access that environment. And then if you don't have the proper segmentation, the proper identity access management controls, you have the account takeover happen, right? To harvest your credentials, gain control of the victims to execute those fraudulent transactions. Elevated privileges of role-based access controls are going to be critical here, and then lateral movement going back to the network segmentation part of it, and that's kind of the enabled pipeline, right? Where AI is just there, empowering and fueling these different things to happen. As we all know, we have security boundaries. AI is no different, right? So focus on network security, focus on identity, focus on the perimeter, and to deal with those endpoint protections against traditional cyber threats. AI is just going to be one more different thing to account for now, right? So system prompt defines the behavior and acts as a critical security boundary that controls those instructions and those access points. Having that AI context and memory, context windows and memory, store those stateful AI interactions can be exploited to leak sensitive data exfil, manipulating of outputs, looking at the tool access and the RAG pipeline, right? Retrieval augmented generation pipelines, extend those capabilities, but introduce new vectors, attack vectors, entry points for not authorized data access and manipulation. So now you have additional attack points and entry points to put into your playbooks and build tabletops, build situational awareness around. Prompt injection, I mean, that's part of the OWASP top 10 LLM. AI just brings it to a different state, right? So prompt injection manipulates AI behavior like SQL injection, looking at database, endangering of databases, causing risks like data leaks, prompt injection that inserts malicious code into the input of the system, overriding the instructions, overriding the model itself, and then making it do something that was not privy to do, right? It was not supposed to do these sorts of things, triggering something to have an authorized action. Some of the different things that can come out of that sort of situation is exposure of your keys, your tokens, exposure of your data, right? Something that's going to go awry that it wasn't really in the original scope of the assessment as this model was deployed and vetted. Data exfiltration, that's huge, right? That's a huge problem for us security practitioners, right? Understanding that researchers have demonstrated in practice already real world attacks where malicious prompt in, Slack integration, AI integration, exposing private channel data, API keys, highlighting the risk for conversational platforms, whatever's being used in the enterprise, whatever's been allowed, embedded, to understand what could go wrong if somebody puts W2 or sensitive data, sensitive information, tax information, self PII, PHI, that sort of thing, right? Looking at all these things, how that information can be, handled, that can be used to poison memories in your models to lead to system problem leakage, revealing internal model instructions. So that threat vector perspective in the LLMs are something that we really weren't thinking about. Now more and more people are thinking about as they're developing their AI security boundaries, and then dealing with that mitigation, right? How are you going to be able to have strict prompt validation, right? That input output, that shift left mentality, right? Building those particular controls into your into your development pipelines, having API scans, scanning for API vulnerabilities, right? How that API is being, built from the ground up. Having those prevent unauthorized data access points and manipulation vectors are going to be helping the organizations, toward these sorts of attacks as they move forward. Jailbreaks and agentic AI, right? So we all hear of agentic AI. There's a lot of different things happening in this space, right? So this is just very high level, something to look out for that were pervasive in 2025. Jailbreak techniques, agentic AI, right? Dangerous outcomes and security implications. Basically, this slide is just to show that agentic AI and these different AI tools are going to continue to, circumvent security controls, circumvent techniques to break systems, do different things that we're not supposed to be allowed to do in the first place, to deal with outcomes of unauthorized code execution, data exfil, like we've been talking about, triggers that can have some sort of cascading downstream impact to the enterprise. And we just don't know if it's until it's too late or there's some sort of breach and incident happening, right? So understanding that agentic AI is going to be continuing to be modified, enabled, and empowered from the blue team security side, we need to understand what things are out there to stop these things from happening, because they're just going to become more pervasive of more models and more AI is being used in the enterprise. For those security practitioners, we have the top 10, right? We have top 10 for generative AI, top 10 for LLM, prompt injection, sensitive data disclosure, supply chain vulnerabilities, model poisoning, misinformation, hallucination. All these sorts of top 10 things are going to be really important for practitioners to understand, to look at, to adjudicate as they're building their security program, as they're building their threat hunting programs, to understand that there's a lot of different entry points that it could happen out of an LLM, out of an AI model, out of some sort of AI enablement for the enterprise. And the teams are understanding what that could mean for them from a security perspective, they're going to be better positioned to protect against that. So AI is, like I mentioned, it's empowering, it's infueling different classical attack methods, right? So now we have automated exploits, right? AI can analyze vulnerabilities, rapidly generating tailored exploit scripts that bypass defense mechanisms faster than traditional manual methods, right? Enhanced vulnerability discovery. Large language models review and understand complex code bases, identify flaws in SQL injection faster and more accurately. We all saw what Claude did with some of the vulnerability scans they're doing in-house within their own models, right? They're identifying lots of vulnerabilities faster, more seamless, right? So it's more important to understand that you don't want to put your eggs in that one basket, right? You want to have like an independent body to scan and validate that, but more and more teams are using AI to scan against AI vulnerabilities, right? If that makes sense. From an orchestration perspective, AI coordinates multi-step attacks like API abusing, credential stuffing campaigns at a massive scale, so increasing success rates and complexity. So it's not about what they're doing, it's the scale of what they're doing it in, right? That scale is going to be growing tenfold, continuously to be improved and grow and mature. So we need to, as blue teamers and defenders, kind of have to scale up right along with that. Uh, just this, graphic kind of shows some of the different things in vulnerability discoveries that I've seen, right? Shift left, I call it shift left 10 ways to Sunday. We should have done that from the beginning. Feasibility stage, reconnaissance stage, incorporate that into the environment. And as you start seeing more code review, more security risk assessments are going to be ticking in that upward trajectory to deal with script generations, exploits around that, exploits around misconfigurations for your models, right? More and more things are out there to, that can, go awry when it comes to software development, testing. But that's why the security developers need to work hand in hand with the security teams to adjudicate and adjourn for these sorts of vulnerabilities. AI and malware, right? So malware is no different, right? Cyber criminals are increasingly using those technologies to enhance their malware development. Ransomware is probably going to be augmented by AI here in 2026. AI enables the automatic generation of malicious code that can adapt to evade traditional attack methods. Employing AI-driven obfuscation techniques, attackers make malware harder to analyze. Reverse engineer, increasing persistence and stealth. So just more TTPs out there, more IOCs out there, more just pervasiveness of prevalence in the environment, right? Additionally, AI can automate those reconnaissance processes by rapidly scanning target environments, identify those vulnerabilities, and tailoring those malware payloads for having maximum damage, maximum impact. So it's really important to understand that as AI starts, being more pervasive and proliferate without the environments that are you're defending, you need to understand that that life cycle is going to be more and more important to protect right at the onset and see it through from the process from cradle to grave to make sure that you don't get you don't get popped, you don't get hacked with AI in your malware right through a malware attack that was developed through AI enablement. Data leakage, right? Data exfil, probably one of the worst things that we can think about when it comes to as a defender, right? Training your models to you know detect unintentional memory exposure, right? Sensitive information leakage, training your data. So augmenting your DOP program, augmenting your playbooks, augmenting your SOAR platforms, right? Incorporating that into your pipelines can help situate those confidential information data sources to stop from happening, and sanitizing your data, right? Going back to data security posture management, going back to just baseline security controls around classification, data ownership, data stewardship. There's a lot more onus on that sort of baseline configuration and assessment now to make sure that something, if there's a pivot or deviation of a flag that gets enabled, the you're going to be able to detect that and then not have some sort of data leakage from an AI system in place, right? So more and more information is happening around hallucination of your sensitive data, plausibility of sensitive data being generated to create misinformation, some information that's not correct, reputational risk, reputational harm. Think about that perspective. People can use AI to put something out there that's not really true, only to cause disruptions to actually go in around the defense perimeters and do real damage from that perspective. So just some things to keep in account, keep in mind as more and more pervasive AI systems are happening within the environment. Sensitive information, so think privacy, right? The type of sensitive data that's at risk, your credentials, your tokens, any sort of crown jewels, right? So think the crown jewels for your organization. It's going to be really important to have that hardened as much as you can, have that locked down as much as you can to prevent that sort of sensitive data to be put out there through an AI and LLM, right? Look at what systems are talking to those models. So think Salesforce, think your CRM, think a GRC, like an Archer, ServiceNow, anything that has some sort of API enablement or API call is fair game for AI system interaction, fair game with disclosure, fair game for attack, right? So have those things in mind as you're building your codes, as you're building your applications, and know that attackers can exploit these things through prompt injection, through confidential data, leading to identified theft, corporate espionage, and financial fraud. So just more and more, just we didn't have a work cut out for us. Now it's even crazier with everything happening that's moving so fast, and understanding that we need to have defenses that can scale right along with that. From an AI system security principles perspective, treat everything as untrusted code. So it's kind of the zero trust paradigm, right? Consider AI executing as untrusted code that can produce unpredictable outputs, necessitating caution design and security control similar to software systems. Having that system isolated, kind of like what one of the previous speaker was talking about, kind of, don't have it out there that it can talk to everything, right? Kind of have it siloed in its own sandbox to deal with, how it's training, how it's acting, how it's behaving, to deal with particular situations on how it can leak sensitive infrastructures across the session or sensitive data exfil, right? Output validation, validate, trust but verify, having those AI generated outputs to detect and block harmful, incorrect, and sensitive data before delivery, before production. So everything from your staging, UAT, development, testing environment, everything has to be approved, assessed, approved, assessed, until it goes all the way to production. And if you have that, you have more checkpoints, more toll gates to prevent sort of situation from happening that can cause some harm at the end of the day, right? And then this is a never-ending life cycle, right? Continuous monitoring, things are always moving, things are always going to be changing. Having that continuous monitoring, continuous integration into your pipelines to deal with these sorts of rapid response perspectives when something is considered wrong, when something's considered off, and understanding that you can put something and continuous monitoring, have a flag, have some sort of access point to make sure if something does get flagged, you can actually get to it, handle it, and not make it be a full-fledged incident and breach. right? From an architecture perspective, prompt isolation, output validation, authorization of your tooling, filtering of your augmented models, and your continuous monitoring. All that is going to kind of work in tandem, in parallel, as you're moving through the process of shifting left, right? So having that access, having that viability, having that visibility, being able to, shift left and control these things as much as you can, it's going to really help those architects, those engineers, those security teams be the best position to have and deal with AI security threats. Red teamers, right? So there's frameworks out there already that help red teamers like MITRE Atlas, and then obviously the OWASP Top 10 Gen AI out there to help with having those taxonomies, having integrated into the MITRE ATT&CK framework as well, augmenting MITRE ATT&CK into your environment if you're using that currently to help anticipate those threats, help deal with those particular risks. Because at the end of the day, you're reducing risk as much as you can, understanding there's a lot of tools out there that can help those teams from a red teaming perspective, from a GRC framework perspective, and move forward and helping organizations have a better security posture at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, have AI aware, shift left, software secure development lifecycle integrated into your environment, have secure prompt engineering for those that are end users that have proper training, proper vetting, access to actually use any tools out there, and continue to do pen testing, continue to do AI red teaming, continually access and exercise, having those tabletops, having that robust testing of your environments all the time to improve those defenses against those threats. You have a new TTP, a new IOC, look at it, assess it, bring it into the fold, ingest it through through your cyber threat intelligence platforms, recorded future, whatever you're using, Flashpoint, whatever you're working in through your environment, making sure that's done, making sure that's adjudicated, making sure that's handled the right way, and that's only going to help you have a secure AI development practice in place, right? AI governance, that's always going to be there. Risk management's always going to be there. There's the risk management framework, then this AI RMF. There's the cloud security controls matrix that's out there. I know this was North America based only, but I know there's a lot of folks watching us from overseas, India, Pakistan. ISO has AI governance standards as well. You're familiar with the ISO, ISMS, Information Security Management Systems. They have their own proprietary standards, having that best practice for AI lifecycle governance that deal with ethical use, accountability, continuous monitoring of your system. So bringing that governance guardrail, bringing that the control from a GRC perspective is going to be critical if you want to enforce accountability and validation that the things are happening the way they should be happening, right? So some of the final takeaways here is AI amplifies your social engineering. They create highly convincing and personalized attacks through your deepfakes, increasing the effectiveness and scale of those social engineering attacks. New attack surfaces from your LLMs. Those large language models introduce vulnerabilities like prompt injection, system leakage, AI agent exploits, expanding that cyber risk landscape. So the cyber risk landscape just got way bigger. Our footprint got way bigger to protect against. Persistence of traditional vulnerabilities are going to continue to be there. Classic threats such as phishing, malware, credential theft, credential stuffing attacks, they're always going to be there, but they're just augmented. They're just, tenfold powered by AI. So understand that and how that looks like for your organization, and then having the need for AI aware security architectures, having that effective defense shift left perspective in your architecture, having threat modeling enabled in your environment wherever possible, having those controls, having that AI governance enablement and frameworks in place to continue to test for AI risk, continue to manage those AI risks as you move forward in your journey, right? So just some of the different things I wanted to discuss, right? At the end of the day, guys, it's all about AI. We're not replacing the attackers for sure. It will just scale them, and in 2026 and beyond, we started seeing this in 2025. We started seeing this as more and more usage of AI, is more education on AI is happening. Attackers are gonna want to take advantage of that. They're gonna want to, deal with that and come at us. So we need to understand that they're not gonna be replacing the attackers. They're just gonna make them just more, better in the sense of practicing their crafts, and us as blue team or defenders need to kind of scale as well, right along with them. And with that, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
I love it. All right, so can we all kind of come back and chat about it a bit?
Yeah, definitely.
All right. All right, give me a second, as I'm just going to rearrange this on the screen. 1 second, and get our I'm gonna put you here so we can all talk to you. There you are. You guys all not see where you are.
Definitely
That's,
wanted to leave some time for questions, so I'm glad we have time.
yeah, excellent. Thank you. Give me 1 second and I'll have a new screen popped up here. Here we all are. There we are. All right. Okay, you got fans. I see in the chat. Here, I'll just add it to the screen. Very educational presentation. Excellent. So thank you, Hector. Excellent. Okay, so yes, I'm gonna let you guys. I
Yeah, I
yield.
mean,
Okay.
thoughts on the panel and any thoughts, any feedback?
I like what you said about
Anything immediate?
governance.
Definitely.
I like what you said about governance because it's important. I mean, we have to act on it the right way, but you can't get away from it. I know nobody likes it. Nobody likes audits, but auditors don't like audits. But yeah, no, you're right. It's a great job. I like the
Thank
way
you.
you work that in.
Thank you.
This is cool because I think we're hopefully building up, right? Because I can tell you, you're like what I'm going to be talking about. This is awesome, bro. Because I'll definitely be saying that they should watch yours because I think it kind of all kind of just comes together really
Yeah, it
well.
comes together. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, it's designed to have that kind of narrative, and so this is setting the stage for what we'll build on, and I think you set it so beautifully. And yeah, and there is that sort of human AI intersection of what the AI is doing. But yes, people can go and ask AI anything to sort of make their attacks better, and then they can just do them at scale. And I also think that
When I go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, go for it.
I was just going to say when we talk to organizations, we talk about building bridges, right? And AI is like one of those things that just boom kind of showed up, right? And but organizations need to understand that there's still got to be the credibility needs to be there, right? And the confidence level just may not be there now. And you can see it, right, in commercials. Initially these commercials for AI were like, it'll do everything for you. Now it's like it's still learning, but it can continue to learn,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not bad. You just took a step back, right? But I think now when you start talking about AI, and I think you did a good job of providing kind of this fundamental kind of knowledge, and it's overwhelming because it
It is.
should be, because it's not easy, but like you can start to help build a bridge, right? And like with your information, it's like, okay, I know I'm overwhelmed right now, but how do I get to the point where I'm kind of confident and I say cocky. I like my organizations to be cocky about, how they're doing business, right? So
Yeah.
I think you've provided that kind of really good fundamental foundation.
Yeah, some companies are more risk averse, some companies are more risk tolerant, right? So it depends on them to your point, and to your point, John, in the sense of what's going to make them business and what's going to identify what the amount of risk they want to take to be more innovative, to be more, in the know, in the mix, cocky, right? To your point, and then use that to make sure you're adhering to the different things that could happen out of an AI situation, out of an AI enablement, out of an AI risk. So yeah, definitely I'm on board with both of you, with Frank and John.
Definitely with Facebook. The crazy part about it is AI has been in the max forever, but now it's like real popular. But remember, I'm gonna say back in the day, a couple years ago, when you're talking about X, Y, and Z, you go to Facebook and it's in your feed.
Yeah,
It's always listening.
yeah.
Hmm.
Always.
I mean, I I mean I went to a Ross a couple months ago, and all of a sudden I saw an ad for Ross. I'm like, what's going on? Like, I mean, it geo tagged me into a Ross, and it's showing me a Ross, Ross information for to buy stuff, right? So like, okay, yeah. So it's
Yeah,
interesting.
mine let me know that I love golf way too much.
There you go.
Like
Yep.
that's what
I think the thing that's really scaring me now is I use Perplexity and I'm using
Mhm.
Claude in ways that you're like, oh, let me just sync in with your Gmail and your G Drive and your everything. And then I have conversations now with Claude. I used to just type, now I just talk. And it's like, do you want me to add that to your calendar? And I'm like, no, not, you know. So the access that it has is pervasive and I'm giving it, and then like you were saying, I mean, I do, and I'm not working for government because that's its own issue. Because we've seen, I believe recently the CISA director just got replaced because
Mm-hmm.
he was just kind of, taking classified information and
Putting
just
stuff out there. Yeah.
And so I always have to remind myself that when anything you put into any of these LLMs, like a human being on the back end, is possibly reading it. If the cops want it, they can subpoena it. So none of this is private. And I think this maybe probably is slightly out of scope, but I'll just mention it and we can bring it back in scope. Is I had a misconfiguration on my Azure account, and I kept getting bills and I'm a single person, uh, for $112 every month, and it took me. I could not get any support. Finally, had to go to my program director as a senior manager at Microsoft, saying, "Help! I can't stop this." And so misconfigurations. And then she was like, okay, they need to refund you the whole thing. And they're like, no, we're just going to prorate it for this last month. So I'm still fighting with them about this. But so my point being is if you're a company and a person, you talk cybersecurity being a business decision, you misconfigure in your cloud, that's kind of its own risk. And your people in your organization can be racking up thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars of bills that are completely unexpected if you misconfigure these systems. They're not cheap to run and
Yeah.
I'm
manage.
not
So I
gonna
just
I'm not gonna say who, but someone was down beginning of the year, into last year for a long period of time. I'm quite sure you guys all know what cloud
Mm-hmm.
service that was.
Yeah.
Yep.
Zone one, right? East zone one, I think. So yeah, we all know what happened there. Philippa, I know Peter Schwartbacher, you had him before in one of the panels. I think he posted something that resonated with, like, the AI phenomenon is here. Let's not drop the ball like we did with with the cloud ball, right? And I think we all talked about cloud. Now we're in this space with AI. So what do we need to do to not drop that ball? Like a lot of people did drop the ball with cloud and where how things are cloud. And now it's funny because a lot of people are coming back in house, right, on prem from cloud, right? So it's like an oxymoron, or I don't know how you want to call it, right? Now we're bringing the guardrails in house, build your own AI, like LMPPT or whatever your company name, add AI next to it, and they're in house within the data center, building data centers, being colos with all those controls in house instead of the cloud. So it's come full circle, but it's just interesting. It's just interesting that we're doing that now, coming back to on-prem.
So, so do you think we're learning? Do you think we've learned the lesson?
I mean, definitely learn the lesson, but at the end of the day, it's all about dollars, right? It's all about the money. And if you think about it, what's going to cost them? Is the juice worth the squeeze, as they like to say, right? Is the risk worth taking and jumping and doing it? So, yeah, but I totally get it. I mean, I feel that lessons were learned, and hopefully more lessons are going to continue to be learned as we're moving in this AI journey together.
I've got a
Yes.
question from Hector. Do you believe that the misuse of AI would mostly occur with organizations that are blindly implementing AI in daily operations?
I'll take this one now. I'll let the panel answer. I think the answer is yes, but I think it's across the board. It just doesn't have to be someone that is misusing, and it just doesn't have someone that's completely ignoring that. It can happen to anyone, even the more robust organizations that say they have an AI program, say they have a steering charter, committee, governance program. It can attack them just as much. But obviously, if you're ignorant or having that particular, oh, that's not going to happen to me mindset, or I don't even want to deal with it, or we're just gonna call AI when that's not really happening, then it's gonna be probably gonna hit them harder than most people. I'll open up to the
No, I
panel,
know.
get their thoughts.
I think I think for me that's a great question. But the reality is, like, the fundamental problem with the question is to work blindly, right?
Blindly.
Like, one of the first things we do is when we talk to organizations, we ask them what their company mission is, and then two, what their cyber mission is. And I think if you can clearly articulate your mission, whether it be what your company does or what your cyber aspect of your company does, then you don't really go into it blindly, right? You start to have kind of that vision that you know what you want to look like in 6 months. So yeah, hell yeah. When people just do stuff blindly, yeah, they're gonna suffer, right? But I think if they could sit down and have some sort of vision, and it doesn't have to be a very technical vision, but if they can have some sort of vision as to where they want to be in 6 months, 2 years, it'll definitely help them.
Yeah. Check the depth before you jump in. Know what you're
Yes.
doing. Where does it align with your business?
Yes. I mean, it starts like when I have conversations with leaders and just people that that are entrepreneurs. It's like, we want AI, and the first question I ask, what are you trying to solve for? What are you trying to do?
We
And
just
they're
want
like, yeah, they're like, they look at you, they're like, that's a good question. Well, you need to answer that before you take the next step,
it.
right? And unfortunately,
Yeah.
everyone is so riled up and just, they feel like they're gonna get behind or get left in the dust with this AI craze that we're in, that they just end up losing visibility into what's actually gonna help their business and augment their business and be more productive, right? So, yeah, it's definitely a 22 for
And it's
sure.
hard, right? Because you could go back to like the cloud, thing that we were
Mm-hmm.
supposed to learn from.
Yep.
A lot of people went to the cloud and it's like, why? And they were like, because it saves money. And then when you start looking at it, you're like, dude, do you know what your ingress and egress costs are? And they're like, what is ingress and egress cost? And then it's just like, yeah, dude, like, where are you honestly saving money?
Yeah.
And
Just pull
they're
up the
not,
AWS bill.
yeah,
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 I mean, it's crazy. I see a question there. What's a typical roadmap initiating an AI governance project? I know we talk about governance. In my experience, having an AI policy, you need to have some sort of documentation to bound you to that, or having some sort of steering committee, a charter, a security champion, somebody that can kind of get the ball rolling. But it all starts with asset management. Once again, we're going back to the well, right? Baseline, understanding what you have, understanding what's in the environment. If you don't know what you have, how can you implement AI to anything in the environment, right? So having these sorts of things are going to be kicking off initiators for AI governance, effective AI governance. And I've been on that bandwagon for a year and a half now, as you've seen. I know I've been with some of the team members here in different panels in the past. I've written articles on this stuff, so definitely want to open up to the panel and get their thoughts on how they can kick the governance party started there.
Well, I think it starts with what are the assets that you want to protect,
Correct.
and then and a great question that we can continue on since we're part of an event and we are at time. And let's jump that over to Sherry's session, and we'll just continue these conversations and answering these fantastic questions. So bring your
Thank you.
questions. And now we're actually going to get into more of the identity management risk, where identity was the breach, AIM, cloud access, and privilege of use. So we'll continue our conversation about cloud, since there is on-prem, there is cloud, there is hybrid, and there's also multi-cloud and all the breaches that happen, in those gaps between systems. So let's go over and join Sherry in the next session. We'll see you all there. Thanks, everyone.